Hi everybody, welcome to Center Stage. I'm Rajiv, your host, and today I have Mike Minchew from DXC Technologies. Mike is the head of Global Sales and Marketing Enablement. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Really appreciate you taking the time to be here.
It's great.
So we were having a great conversation before we got on camera about Mike and his journey, but I want to start with DXC Technologies. Tell the audience a little bit about DXC Technologies and what they do.
Well, for those who don't know, DXC was born out of that merger of the CSC business and the HP Enterprise Services business.
Oh, about 2.5 years ago?
About 2.5 years ago, we put these two pieces together. So today it's around a $22 billion enterprise, businesses in 70 countries, almost 130,000 employees. It is operating at a massive scale.
Yeah, so the merger happened in 2017, yes. But it dates back even further, back into the 90s with a company called EDS, back in the day when Ross Perot was actually president of EDS and ran for president early back in the days. So tell us about EDS, where you started and sort of the journey and how you got here.
That is a bit of a story. So having come out of college, done consulting, and landed at EDS, and here is the company that is the founder of the IT services industry with this huge personality, of a leader. And so, it was a wonderful learning experience. It was probably that foundational culture that I was ingrained in early on, of being very respectful, of understanding that what we did was important. There are a lot of great stories that I can tell about, the things that really mattered. I mean, even down to the fact that our security guards or our groundskeepers, they were employees of the company. They were not outsourced, and there was this belief and understanding that everything, then I'd be up there working on the weekend because that was the kind of culture it was. Not that it was so driven, but that what was going on was important. And I'd be up in my office working, and like every 45 minutes, a huge burly guy, security guard with a 45 on his side, would come by and go, "Mr. Minchew, you're doing all right." I mean, but it sent the right messages, right? There's something to that you understand and know that what you're working on. Because at the time we were doing a lot of the government work, almost all the Medicare and Medicaid. I mean, that's where the business started, and you felt it. I mean, the level of security, the protection around the data and everything, the integrity of that. There was so much integrity in that business,
and
I think
going back to the respect of the culture, right, which is so important, which has been ingrained in, I think, in you and your journey getting here. But so tell us a little bit about EDS and sort of how did you get here?
Well, so joining EDS, and then there's, I had a couple of roles there to start out with. I originally came over in a finance role. Okay. I have a finance background as well as a marketing and sales, and so I started out working in the web area. And so whether, after the little tour in finance, so whether it was analytics, I ran eds.com for a while. Lots of stories in how you get places, but it's all about the people that you meet and the experiences that you get a chance to work on. And so I did a number of projects for some of our charity work, our EDS Byron Nelson Championship. We did the TV show American Choppers, and we built motorcycles, we built pinball machines.
Wait, hold on. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but there's a story here that I think we're glazing over that we should probably do a little bit of a deeper dive. So first of all, I want to double click on the finance part.
Sure.
Because you told me off camera before we were talking about sort of how you were in finance and you ended up in marketing.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a story there.
Yeah.
So I came, it is one of these things where you join a company and you start to meet people. And one of the people that I was supporting in my finance role, I was running the finances for all of the marketing, communications, and I helped actually set up and form the first global sales organization.
Okay.
But it was the CMO at the time, who was a New Yorker, and he took a liking to me because I did a good job for him and looked out for everything. And finally one day we're having a quick conversation while we're both in the men's room, and he's like, he leans over and kind of goes like, "Mike, finance is for losers. Come join marketing, work for me. You can do whatever you want."
There you go.
And that kicked the door open.
There you go. Now, obviously, finance is not for losers. We know that. But that was a great opportunity for you to jump into marketing.
And you have to take those opportunities. When they're presented, you don't say, "Where's the seat?" You say, "Yes, I will do that, and we'll figure it out as we go."
There you go. And so that sort of changed your career path.
Changed my career path completely.
Yeah, and so you also mentioned American Chopper. For those you don't remember, it was a show on Discovery about motorcycles. And you also mentioned the Byron Nelson Championship. So let's just take a moment to talk about that story, because that's also an amazing story.
Okay, so what had happened was I had come over, joined the marketing organization, and I had done some good work on eds.com and had kind of caught the eye of the CEO. And one of our little investments that we made every year to the tune of about $20 million was this PGA Tour event that is that supports the Dallas Children's Charity. the EDS Byron Nelson Championship. And it had been a very successful event for a number of years. All the top clients were flown in every year. We treated them like royalty, you know, Four Seasons, the whole bit. But it really wasn't getting us the pop that we needed in the marketplace. Didn't have the visibility. And so the CEO at the time said, Mike, can you take a look at this? Your team seems to be very creative. Everything y'all touch seems to go pretty well. And so I had like 48 hours to turn an idea around. And it popped in my head. I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, that TV show that I'm watching with my little, you know, with my kids, they're like 6 and 7 at the time. We've been watching this show called American Choppers. And it was about this father and his 2 sons in New York who build these incredibly beautiful choppers to support charities or support the 9/11 firefighters or space shuttle, you know, all these different things. And so we did have a contact at Discovery. So I made a phone call. 2 days later, we're on the jet. We're flying up there to meet the guys. Pitched the idea. They loved it. It was going to be a really something different from them. For one, IT services industry has and the PGA Tour had never reached out to them to build choppers, right? No one ever put those together. Then it was, we're going to do 3 choppers identical. So we have 1 to give to the tournament winner on TV at the end of the tournament, 1 to auction for charity, and 1 to keep and use as a promotional. And we're also going to decide we're going to build a line of pinball machines with the guys. Pinball machines. There you go. And when I tell the story, I liken it to this is something that I've been interested in for a number of years, and I have a collection of games. And you think you know what you know, but diving off the deep end, this is like building a factory to build 11 Corvettes and then blowing up the factory. There are so many pieces and parts and components and artwork and licensing and things that go into this, but we did it. It was a worldwide phenomenon. It was our target market. I mean, think about our clients, they're in that age group. They grew up with pinball machines in the places where they went as kids, and they remember this, and that combined with the motorcycles was magic. I mean, they were on the big billboards in Times Square, and the PR team went nuts with it, and it was a huge success. And it kind of also changed my career path, and to this day.
What I love about that idea is it's just a great example of thinking outside the box and sort of not being afraid to go for something really big and think differently. And as a result of that, it's changed your career. It opened up a bunch of doors. It sort of put branding EDS on the map. Byron Nelson Championship had motorcycles that they're giving away, pinball machines, something you don't normally think about. So I really love that story. Let's bring it back to DXC in your current role. One of the things you talk about is sort of the importance of listening to sales. Why is that important? I mean, I know it's obvious as a marketer, but I want to hear from your point of view. Why is that important?
I don't know that it is obvious. I mean, we talk to a lot of companies and people all the time sharing ideas, and what I find is that a lot of companies in their early years, they're very grounded on sales. They have a sales-focused culture. One of the terms that I like is sales empathy, is that nothing happens until somebody sells something. I mean, we all learn that in 101 business school, but it's amazing how people forget it. And we see too many organizations where over time they kind of lose that hunger and that alignment with sales. And as a result, you can get into a situation, this is always my test when I talk to someone, is can marketing in your company claim success if sales is failing? And if the answer is that's yes, then we need to have a different conversation. So this really is the core to everything that starts to become this explosive ball that is sales enablement. But you've got to realize that sales is the most, you've got to sell something and then you've got to build it and deliver it. But it kind of starts over, and yes, you need a great product, but this idea that you can be successful and not have a sales-focused culture is a problem as companies, especially large companies, they mature. And we see it all the time.
And let's talk a little bit more about, you talk about packaging sales empathy. What do you mean by that?
Well, this is about putting in place an ecosystem where at every touch point, every dollar spent, every activity on that sales marketing side is there to help sales do their job better. In too many cases, we make it hard on them. Either they don't have the air cover they need, the presence, the understanding of the marketplace, and it's a consistent a theme in here that we watch and that I've been really working on lately in my role is how do we make sure that every message that marketing is putting out there in market is the exact same message that sales is using when they're on their sales calls and in their meetings, and is also the same message that in our world, since in many cases we have lots of people walking the halls of the client, once we've done a deal with them, that they are delivering the same message as well. And all of this actually comes together to create an environment where it's easier for sales to continue to sell.
Yes.
Because you may get into a business, but you want to grow that footprint over time. And so all of this starts to become tied together. I mean, we could talk on this, I think, for hours. It's something I'm really passionate about.
Yeah.
But it starts with sales empathy and simply understanding that for a large part of the company, that's got to be your focus.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And I think, having sales and marketing in sync is very, very important in terms of delivering the same message and sort of marching to the same beat. And you talked about your role. Let's talk a little bit more about your role. What is it? What does your sort of day, your typical week look like at DXC?
I would probably say there is no typical week.
Okay.
It doesn't with where we are 2.5 years into bringing two very dissimilar cultures and approaches to the world together. 2.5 years into trying to rationalize a massive portfolio. I think when we started the process, there were over 400 primary service offerings, all with tons of sub-offerings and capabilities below them. I mean, that's too much for anybody to understand.
Right.
And so part of this is around, again, putting in place a holistic process where we work with, my team went out, we did a pretty in-depth survey about 1.5 years ago that's been used now across all the groups in the company. But we found about 93 different places across the business where there were some elements of sales enablement going on. And I think the first thing you have to do is realize and don't make a judgment, is that good or bad? You can have a centralized model or you can have a decentralized model, but in either case, they all need to be coordinated and working together. And what we unfortunately found was that in a large company, in some cases, it almost becomes competitive. We have, you have different offering teams or different elements of marketing in a large at-scale company competing for the attention of sales.
Right.
Now, so my role really centers around, one, owning, managing, and developing the sales enablement platform. And that's a whole topic that we ought to talk about a little bit later. But these have become space shuttle. They are so complex. This is not an electronic filing cabinet. This is an entire system that's designed to bring together all of the tools, processes, support, ratings, feedback, ability to create custom just all kinds of even starting to broach into learning management systems, but focused on sales. And these are coming together in the marketplace. But that is one of my primary functions is to run, maintain that. But to do that, I have to manage hundreds and hundreds of content providers across the company and keep them on a process that it's one thing to get all your stuff into a tool. It's another thing to know whether or not all the stuff in the tool is good.
Right, and we were talking about quantity versus quality.
Absolutely.
And why less is better, because the higher quality you have, the more effective it's going to be. In so many cases, you're caught up in having lots of different pieces of collateral, sales enablement documents, which is not very effective. But I'm curious. I mean, how do you orchestrate something that massive at scale?
Well, me doesn't. I think that's the answer. I've got a team of people around me who have worked for me for the average 10 years, 13, 14 years. I've had the guy with the 14 patents. I've had brilliant people who are not necessarily clones of me, but different skills, different approaches to life. And it is that team who has the joint responsibility to then coordinate these hundreds of content providers and other process tool, anything that supports our ability to help sales initiate a conversation, drive an understanding of the value, and then ultimately close the deal, and then deliver, and then move on to hopefully growing that footprint. My definition of sales enablement is that entire spectrum, which means everything, every message that we put in market, every message that that's on a piece of collateral or a demo or anything like that. All of this has to be connected. So what we really do is in our world, it's a federated process. It's not about having all these people reporting into one leader. Most of the people around the company are my friends. We've known each other for years, and we all share the same passion for trying to do this and do this right and do it at scale. So it really is it's kind of a numbers game. Like you said, when you have that many offerings, and some of our offerings are very mature. They've been in market 10, 20 years. I mean, some IT services are very mature. As a result, a lot has been created over time. So it's very important to kind of prune the branches of the tree every now and then. But how do you do that? I mean, there's the typical consulting model approach where you just come in and you pull the numbers and the things that aren't being used as much, you prune those. And I would argue that that may not be the most intelligent way to look at it. It is a piece of a puzzle, but we actually went through an exercise like that in the last several years. And one of the stories I like to tell is that in one case there was a recommendation to prune off an entire area of content. Well, it turned out that was the core content that was being used on our $1 billion and up deals. So they don't come up very often, so the content doesn't get used a whole lot. But it wouldn't be a very smart thing to do to get rid of that content. So there's nowadays you really have to. You can't just manage a business by spreadsheet. You have to get into and understand the details and understand the drivers, and you have to be out there and talking with sales leadership, and make sure that not only is the company's sales strategy reflected in what you're driving, because obviously over time you're going to migrate from certain kinds of offerings to newer, higher margin offerings. You want to be driving that, but doing it in a way that's still allowing, for sales to deal with the customers who they're not going to sign the deal if they don't get this component. So you can't just eliminate this. So it's every day is different. To answer your question in a very long way, the original question is there is no average day. Every day is a new challenge, and you just better come in and be very good with ambiguity.
Very well said. You got to be comfortable with ambiguity, even at a company at this scale. And it sounds like it's a complicated ecosystem, and depending on different use cases and different personas, that's how you're sort of crafting your day, your week, or your quarter accordingly. Let's talk about sort of sales enablement versus marketing enablement. What's the difference between the two?
It depends on the business.
Okay.
It's kind of like everything that we talk about today it needs to be reflective of the realities of the business and your own business model. I mean, these are, I think we've learned a lot of good basic guidelines, having done this at scale now 3 or 4 times. But the reality is that where we're focused on this is how do you develop an ecosystem that gets the right content and the right work being done in the right place. And what I mean by that is, in our world, I would never want marketing writing my core offering content. We just went through this, 400 offers, all these sub-offers, all this engineering. I mean, it's very technical.
Very technical.
And what I want marketing doing is what they're really good at.
Which is what?
Which is polishing, bringing in the correct imagery, reflecting the corporate, that we have a very clear and consistent mission, purpose, clarity of where we're going, clarity of vision, and where we're taking clients, in their business of long term. That's what they're good at. That's not what my engineers are good at, right? So what we've done is we want to make sure that the SMEs, the engineering level, the build level, solutioning level people, that they have a place within our platform to generate their level of the content, and we actually embedded a writing and editing team with them in their build organization. So they're people they're comfortable with. They're in. They report to the same leader, and they help get the content to a certain level, and then it's passed over. And there's an entire set of, I hate to use the word templates because it's not fonts and colors, but it's guidelines around what does a client want to talk about at this stage in the sales cycle. But those were uncovered and developed through a very in-depth process going through with sales and sales leadership to understand today. It's not the same questions they were asking a year ago or 5 years ago. So these are constantly being updated, but at least when sales picks up this piece mapped to this sales stage for any offer in the portfolio, they roughly know it will answer this set of questions. And that's what the goal becomes here. And so we separate that out, and then so sales and marketing enablement, when you ask that, how is it divided? What you're really trying to do, in my opinion, is to get everything in one place. One set of, this is the single source of truth, whatever you want to call it, the Library of Congress. To your point earlier, the smallest possible set within everybody in the company. In our world, what we did, we said everybody in the company has access to this. This is not a locked off thing for sales or sales support. All 130,000 employees have access to this, and in the last 12 months, like 70,000 have been there to do some element of their job. If you're out on an account, maybe you're going to, you want to talk to your client, your cohort there about some new offering, and so you can go out and research that. If you're in HR, you may need information, especially if you're in procurement or legal. You may need to go research something for something going on. So we have everything in one place, and then I want marketing drawing from that same basic set of content for all their campaigns and everything that they're going to develop. So if you do that, you are both controlling but yet empowering people to know that they're using the right messaging at the right time, the stuff that is absolutely certified in our world. We have a term called certified, and that is the content that they know they can pick up and run with and use, and there's not going to be any issues. Not out of date. It's not something we're trailing off. We're not going to be selling anymore. And it's, those. So it is really more of a mindset than a hard function. When I talk to people, I say I function like Switzerland. I need to be neutral and kind of in the middle and say, yes, this goes in, no, it doesn't, or this is good enough, or no, it needs to go back and be reworked. And the nice part is that our senior leadership has given my organization that authority so that we actually can be successful in this federated, decentralized model.
Got it. So let's talk about scope. What is the scope of sales enablement?
Well, it's going to vary from company to company. The way we like to look at it is it's everything. We touched on this earlier, but it's all those touch points and the whole spectrum from the messaging your senior executives are out there with, and marketing's in market with campaigns, all the way through sales and then into delivery. So it is such a range of activities, and it'll vary based on what you're selling and what your company does or delivers. It's going to vary, but I think the right thinking is to move beyond what had become a little ingrained, was that it was this small function within sales that was focused on maybe sales training. Sometimes they did the sales onboarding. If you were really lucky, they did sales coaching, for the newer players that were coming on the team. But it was very limited. And I think what we're seeing now is that the forward-looking businesses are really taking a holistic look across the entire spectrum of anything that needs to happen in your company, so that it's easier and faster for sales to get their job done and to give them more time in front of customers and less time looking, pulling together, editing, creating. That's how I define sales enablement.
And it's relatively a new term, I think.
It is a new term. I mean, this is where it's funny, right? I mean, I was at a conference recently. They were talking about the fact that enablement's not a real word. Like Merriam-Webster and other dictionaries don't yet. In fact, there was a petition they were having people sign to get it put in the dictionary.
Enablement's not in the dictionary. Look it up.
Yes, it's not there. But this is a place where what you see is that, as businesses that have been, operating at scale for some time, we've taken tremendous efforts to optimize HR, to optimize finance, to optimize procurement. You name it, we've optimized and financial engineered it into the ground, right? But the sales enablement thing, because in most companies, no one had defined it and no one had pulled the pieces together, whether virtually or physically under one organization, it doesn't work that way. So this is really an opportunity, as I see it in the market, and we're really seeing this exploding. I read an article the other day talking, on LinkedIn, that this recruiters searching for people with sales enablement in their background is becoming one of the top searches in the area.
Interesting.
And so you're seeing the investment dollars from the VCs flowing into these companies that have built these sales enablement platforms over the last 10 years. And they are very sophisticated and very complicated. And this is really and we have an in-house one. I mean, we're lucky because we have a huge company of engineers, brilliant minds, and we started back on this, way back in the day.
You built your own sales.
So we have our own platform, and we meet regularly with the top vendors in the space, and we look at their stuff and we show them what we're working on. We share ideas, so we know we're right there with them. Right. But it's not what I would recommend. The platforms today are becoming so sophisticated that you don't want to go in-house. You really want to license one of these. But that's only part of the story. What we've really learned in the last year or two is that a lot of people feel like they can write a big check, bring one of these platforms in, and it's going to solve their problems. Put all of their stuff, all their process, tools, content, collateral, reference, everything in there. And what you've really done is make it really hard on sales, because making it easier to find junk is still junk. So it goes back to this idea that you have to craft this ecosystem, and you have to start with talking to sales, designing assets that work for them in their sales cycle stages, that answers the questions they need, and keeping that set as small as possible, as up to date as possible. And it really comes down to is spending every bit of energy and brilliance in your company and keeping that set of assets as small and as focused as possible.
And as effective.
Because sales doesn't have time to paw through. If they run a search, put it this way, here's the way I define my role. When sales runs a search on my site, and if they get more than 5 or 10 results for something, I failed. If they get 90, I need a new job. That is not sales enablement. That's just sales mess.
Back to your point about having 93 pieces of collateral,
yes,
and sort of consolidating down to the most effective highest quality set of assets.
And the platforms can help with that. I mean,
Right.
they're not. You can get analytics on. Here's the thing that I struggle with sometimes when I see these sales presentations with platforms is, you can get analytics on and you can see what sales is using.
Mm-hmm.
But if everything that you've got is C-level stuff, yeah, they're going to find the C+.
Right.
Well, that's not, you haven't solved the problem.
Mm-hmm.
The problem comes back to, do you really understand what your messages are? Do you really understand what you're bringing to market? Do you understand your value propositions? Can you package that up and tell a coherent story?
Mm-hmm.
That's what sales needs. They need very simple things.
So we know that companies are investing in sales enablement solutions, but they're pouring money into it, but it's not effective because there's too much, it's a mess, they don't really know. They know they need to invest in it, but they're investing poorly.
The hard part, it's easy to write a check and bring a tool in, and the vendors are great at coming in and getting you set up quickly,
Mm-hmm.
but they're going to put everything you've got in there.
Mm-hmm.
And the vendor cannot possibly know how your sales cycle works, what your salespeople really need. There's an entire process that we've developed, a content governance model around this. That's almost an Accenture-like engagement. It walks through, because we have to do this over and over in our business every time a new offering comes online, or we're going to sunset one. There's a process around what do we need to do, who do we need to talk to, designing the assets, understanding the market. There's a lot that goes into this,
Sure.
And that's really where the value is. And that is what true sales enablement, the kind of thinking that true sales enablement needs to be focused on.
Going back sort of to sales empathy.
Yes, Please don't make it hard on them.
Right.
And more stuff, more stuff is not helpful. But a lot of people don't see that. Or they're in organizations where their metrics and their compensation is somehow become skewed and has been tied to volume. And you see that way too often. So you have the teams in the blog post and the social media teams, or the different content teams in marketing, brochures, and then it's just more and more and more stuff.
Vanity metrics.
Yes,
Yeah.
And so it doesn't work.
Right. So Mike, where do you see sales enablement going in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, we started to whiteboard this out, and where all of the big platforms and things are right now is they're bringing in AI, so machine learning, to start to help with things like recommending content, plugging into Salesforce and looking at the deal parameters and using that data to recommend. And this is becoming kind of standard, price of entry at this point. Now, we get back to the same argument, which is if what you have in your system is not A-level material,
right.
You're just recommending more C-level stuff. So that's not really a fix, but it is another element of the puzzle. But when we start to really sit back and think about where we're going, the reality is that the decision makers are becoming younger and younger. Their buying habits are changing. These are people who are comfortable with probably, if it's 55 or 60% today that buyers are doing their own research in the market and making that much of their decision process before they engage you as a salesperson to sell. I'm looking at this becoming like 80, 85% over the next 5 years.
Okay.
So we're really looking at it as a couple of pieces. One, your buyer is going to change and your seller is going to change. So how can we leverage things like more advanced levels in the AI work to then start to have the AI take over some of that early sales stage work, so that you start to probably shrink the footprint of sales? You're never going to get rid of sales. That human connection is incredibly important.
Sure.
But what you can do is start to give them information the way they want it, serve it up better, make it more accessible, let them get through farther in the stages, and then have your great salespeople come in and really close the deal.
Sure.
And move them in that direction.
Makes
So
sense.
we're looking at things like that to reshape. We're also looking at, for a company like us, we're going to onboard 1,200 new sellers, 1,200 new, less tenured sellers this year alone.
Wow.
As a result, it's hard to get them all ramped up quickly. Yes, we're designing new sales onboarding, but where we're also looking at the AI is, if I can track the top sellers across every offering and look at what they did and what they did at each stage and map that out, I can have the AI actually auto-generate playbooks that, not for the advanced sellers, but for the less tenured sellers, to help them get up to speed quicker. And again, that relieves some of the pressure on the training and the coaching element of driving sales. So that's where we see this going, and I think that it will continue to mature. We're leveraging the AI well now. Got it.
Let's shift gears and have some fun questions for you. So, Mike, tell us, what's your superpower?
Well, they were all fun questions up to now. The superpower, that's a hard one. I think some of the people in my organization say that I have the ability to bend the universe. I think what that comes to is it's a nice way of saying that I have a force of will, meaning that there are times in a business at this scale and operating where you simply have to be dogmatic. You have to be willing to kind of dig in, and whether it's using data or presenting the story a different way, but just never giving up. As long as you're focused on driving the right outcomes for sales, you're going to be successful. But yes, I can be kind of a force of nature at
Bending
times.
the universe, everybody. So you have an incredible responsibility at work. You're managing a lot of people and employees around the globe in 70 countries. How do you achieve work-life balance?
Well, for me, I'm a big believer in, if you're down there 60 hours a week, you're probably not doing something right. Mm-hmm. We are big believers in if you're going to do something more than twice, you should probably automate it. So we do try to move to efficiencies, and I encourage my team, regularly. It's like every Friday afternoon, stop what you're doing for 10 or 15 minutes, put your feet up or whatever words you want to say, and think about what you did this week and go, is what I did it move the business forward? Was it focused? Was it aligned to our objective? But just stop and pause. Right now I see too many times where everybody's running so fast. Mm-hmm. So we try to kind of pull that back and remove that anxiety a little bit. And then, and I try to do that for myself as well. And just like earlier we were talking about, I didn't come up with the idea to do the pinball machines, out of thin air.
Right.
I've been collecting and restoring arcade games, pinball machines for 25 years. So I kind of like at times to go into my collection, and it gives me a chance to work on something with my hands, or tinker a little bit, mm-hmm. and do something physical. And for me, that's I get my need for control and perfection out, so I don't kind of do that to my team.
You mentioned something when we were talking earlier about what was it? Something about you can't decide to stand up today and be brilliant. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, that's
a line from Star Trek.
Yeah, that's right. I'm a big believer in, most things you need to know about life you can have learned from Star Trek, and I think that's a line from one of the original episodes. Is you can't just wake up today and say today I'll be brilliant. That always scares me when I run into to that kind of personality. Mm-hmm. It really is this idea that I think again we fostered in the organization, which is all ideas, are kind of incremental build of other learnings, other experiences. They don't have to all be work experiences. I mean, I've got an incredibly diverse team mm-hmm. in terms of the things that they do and pursue outside of work and at work and personalities. So there's this idea that, you get the right brilliant people together mm-hmm. and you let them talk and work through things, but it's not going to be a light bulb. And in a big business, you can't switch things on and off like that with sales or with an organization. Mm-hmm. You've got to bring them in. You've got to show them the value. You've got to there's this. It is incremental improvement, but it's continuous.
Sure.
You don't ever stop.
Yeah.
I think maybe that's the way that I like to look at that.
Got it. And so my last question: do you have any daily rituals or habits that keeps you focused and productive?
Well, I think we all find ways to manage. I think I'm kind of a believer in keep the simple stuff simple. Mm-hmm. So for me, and I think for the team as well, we try not to waste a lot of time and energy in getting caught up in sometimes in large companies, especially the bureaucracy of it. And we also try to remind everybody to, push back. Mm-hmm. And especially in large companies. I mean, whether it's my stuff or someone else's, every 4 or 5 years, you ought to take a look at the giant rule book that's been built up, because of whatever things have gone right or gone wrong and processes and rules, and throw them out. Right. It's the same as keeping your sales content small. Mm-hmm. You got to keep those rules and processes small. I mean, yes, is this a very process-driven function? Of course it is. Mm. But don't let process become the end to itself. And I think that's one of the ways that we manage and keep the energy and the fun on the moving forward and those incremental improvements for sales.
Mike, thank you so much for being here. I've really enjoyed our conversation. Mike Minchew, Head of Global Sales and Marketing Enablement at DXC Technologies. I'm Rajiv, your host from Center Stage. Thanks everyone for watching. Mike, thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
See you, everybody.